specifically today, we're going to be talking about something that really, I think most of us in the industry have been doing our whole careers and really we just haven't ever seriously questioned it because that's what we were told to do. But that is specifically the veg phase. Is the veg phase needed? On every single nutrient regimen out there, you see veg and you see flower. Is there a need for the one side? Maybe not. And that's what we're going to talk about, right? We just do it because that's how it's done. But here's the fact of the matter. Other crops aren't done like that. You don't see
most other crops.
I mean, I'd venture to say really none that I know of. Not peppers, not cucumbers, not lettuce, not tomatoes, not strawberries, not anything, right?
Yeah, they usually go, and just so everybody understands, when people are talking about corn, it's 70 days. It's 90 days. No one says, it's 20 days of veg and 50 days of flower. No. That's not a thing.
No. And the reality is like the plants are looked at rather than this veg. And this is more in the conventional, zone. It's looked at an entire life cycle. It's not looked at veg and flower. It's really all just one big life cycle, almost more like an autoflower is really, if you think about it. It's like, this is 65 days. That means 65 days.
And we trigger that. And so the beautiful thing is like, and it's funny because my buddy from Golden Coast Genetics, Oscar Goldman, he always told me, he said, hey, when you're testing things, like clone them and flip them right away.
Right.
And I never really thought about that on a bigger aspect. And we're going to get into why, because this isn't just we didn't think about it. There are a lot of constraints for a long time.
Right. Well, and really what we've got 3 segments today. First, we're going to talk about, why it's always been done this way and what those holdovers, and really we believe it's a bit of a holdover from prohibition, but also plant counts and things like that, which we'll talk about.
My building in Michigan, like for me to do it in Michigan, I need to change and not only do I need to change my plant count, it costs me more money to change that plant count. Then you have to look at the risk versus reward.
Right. And then, of course, the second part, we're going to talk about the actual biology, right? And then third, commercial mass. So we're literally going to look at the difference in running 18 and 12 versus just 12 across the board, which saves you a whole lot of money. And we're going to show you that.
A bunch of things.
So without further ado, let's get into it. Josh, if you can move that up a little bit, my friend. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Why do we veg cannabis, okay? And why did it take this long for this industry to even ask whether we have to? Well, I think the very, very first thing is...
The easy one is you used to get in a lot of trouble the more plants you had.
That's it, right? So even from prohibition land, right? So when it came to... Remember everybody with the 99 plant count. Well, you do 99, not 200, not whatever. See a green. And I mean,
when I started... Let's be clear. Yeah. When I started growing I've been growing 30 years now. This is my 30th year growing. When I started growing 30 years ago... There was no plant count.
Well, no, I know.
If you had one plant,
but,
if you had...
Yeah. But still, the 99 mattered. 200 versus 20,
100%.
That mattered, right?
But if you were certain states you were in, you were fucked either way.
Well,
and that was because of federal. It went after 99, it became a federal time.
Yep. And like, California was going to be more lenient than some other places. But when 100%. I grew up on the East Coast, if you had one plant, you were screwed.
But the rationale is for the places that weren't the worst ones, right? It was a per plant output. It wasn't per square meter. Because I even remember
was there that 10,000 like death penalty thing for a while?
Probably somewhere. At least if you're in the Philippines. Actually, it takes 2 plants, I think, in the Philippines. But
right.
Anyway, the whole point was, we did know it's like, okay, and then really parlay that even into Colorado. Okay, we could grow 3 plants. So I'm going to go 3 really big plants.
Huge plants, yeah.
So the thought process of doing it per square meter and things like that, we weren't even thinking like that, even though conventional agriculture and conventional horticulture was obviously already thinking about that. But it's really, again, not thinking about it. It was per plant rather than per square meter.
If you go back to those times, you were really thinking about pounds per light. And just in the last 10 years, it's gotten to grams per square foot, all the normal metrics that you would measure normal crops on.
Well, and again, and the reality is it does, like, the rationale is there if you really think about it, maximizing per plant so that you have less plants. That's what it was all about. And again, even when legalization happened, there were very few states that took a square meter approach to it, which is really what it should always be. It should have always been, okay, you have a micro license, you get 1,000 square feet or whatever, right? Do it how you want. That's how it should be. And even if you look at some of the original writings, like even in Jorge's book, I remember him, talking about sea green and looking at it, and we all could agree that looked like the more efficient way to do it. We were just like, but
that's a lot of plants,
but that's a lot of plants, dude. Like I'm kind of, I don't like, I got some cojones, but maybe not that. But again, the logic made complete sense. So, but how do other crops really think about it? Well, veg time, again, veg time isn't a thing. It's not even talked about. Tomatoes, cucumbers, peppers.
They just have a life
lettuce.
Cycle.
Yes.
Yep. It's just, hey, this is how long it takes. Not, it does this long and and a lot of that they're grown outside, right. So it goes
well. And if you go and you look at Knott's commercial handbook, none of these things it's not broken up like that. It doesn't talk about like that at all. You know what I mean? Obviously, sometimes there'll be more of a structural phase where you might have a higher ratio of nitrogen, something like that. But in the reality, it's not this delineation of veg and flower. And of course, as we've even talked about, even saying like that, that's taking out transition. But what's interesting is you could, with doing the no-veg, you could almost take out the transition. We're even going to talk about morphology wise, what happens a little bit different, which when I read about that, I was like, I didn't consider that.
Am I right in thinking that some of the tomatoes we saw in Europe were like 10 months old, a year old, like they were just,
yes,
they just
because they're indeterminate.
Yep,
they're indeterminate. So they were basically growing like vines. And the fact of the matter is there are annual plants in the world. Cannabis is an annual plant, but most annual plants out there are actually a perennial plant. They're only made annual by the environment. Mm-hmm. So a tomato, if you were to grow it inside or grow in your home, I mean, it's going to keep right. Same with a pepper plant. I've seen people keep pepper plants going for years. I mean, so really
same plant.
Yeah, same plant. Yeah, absolutely. So it's just because it can't overwinter in most environments, right? So if you think about it, most plants want to stick around. That annual thought process, that's a very aggressive, strategy as a plant. Going, look, I got this one growing season, and doesn't matter if it's hot, cold, this, that, the other. Like I got one shot at it, and I got to get it. I got to get it across the finish line, and I've got to reproduce, right? Mm-hmm. So you can think about, if you think about it from an evolutionary standpoint, a perennial makes a lot more sense than an annual does. But again, what we're talking about is nobody ever talks about 14-day veg time with tomatoes. And don't get me wrong, it's not that tomatoes don't have a veg period where they're moving in and they're starting to bloom, set, and everything else. Just nobody talks about it like that. You know what I mean? It's only us that have created this unique mental model.
Yep.
Which I find interesting.
I mean, and everybody, it's funny because all the other farmers look at us with our giant plants and they're like,
what are you doing?
Look at these fucking idiots.
Well, what are you doing? And I'll be honest, like, dude, even when we start looking at the numbers of electricity and everything, it's like, holy crap, like the math starts mathing like really, really, really fast as well, right? And again, the whole legal cannabis can be, so legal cannabis took from the black market. If you remember, and Gabe and I were both here when Colorado as the first state went legal, and literally, and those were the backpack days where it was straight up dispensaries were having guys come in. There were local growers. There were good growers. They'd show up their wares.
I used to have a stack.
And buy on site.
I think about back in the day, and like I used to have a stack of people's info that I would roll around with, so that made it so I could have a certain amount of plants.
Right. Right. So literally the people who built the first legal operations here in Colorado came directly out of the black market. And in fact, they were in a way asked to come out of the black market. Yeah. You know what I mean? It was like, hey guys, hey, we're going to call a truce here. We need you to come out of the shadows and into the light. No pun intended, right? We always use that. And so what were they going to do? They were going to bring basement mentalities. They were going to bring that same thought process of vegging long time, growing big plants, all these kind of things. But then that's where you end up with a lot of the gradients. And I think that's where a lot of the people even started realizing from a consumer standpoint, even the A, Bs, and Cs, right? Because people were having to go into these shops and backpack the shit.
I remember for the Jug Club members, if you guys want to sign up for Jug Club over on patreon.com/Jug Club. Gabe told some hilarious stories about when the MED first started coming in and they literally walked in. It's like, hey, we're going to close our eyes. We're going to come back tomorrow and you're going to promise us that some of these gray market plants will be tagged.
Right.
It's a hilarious story. If you Jug Club members haven't seen it, go check it out.
Well, and again, so that is fantastic. And again, these were the early days, man. You know what I mean? So that was nice. And we were nice little plug for the.
That was a good story.
And not for nothing, but
check it out.
That was. We came from the world of where we were breaking laws.
Well,
so like us continuing to do that
wasn't the biggest deal.
Yeah, it's not like this was something new to us. We've been doing it the whole time.
And we do have a slot of shirts that are available on the website as well. Not for nothing being one of them. But anyway, these U.S. plant counts, these regulations, there's still a real ongoing barrier. There's no question of that. Because even now, most states, unlike Florida's one that doesn't have a camp, but almost every state does have a camp.
My building in Michigan, I got plant counts. And if I want, it's funny because the impetus of this episode, as much as most episodes lately, was, hey, what I'm going to have to increase my plant count what's that going to cost me versus what's the reward? And that's really what kind of that's how this episode came about.
Well, yeah. And it's what is the ROI on that? Because the reality is, and again, we're going to get into this. I know we keep saying this, but we will, I promise. But it changes the numbers that you're running. It changes your clone game. It changes how many clones you're taking.
The whole deal. No-Veg.
Like it definitely changes things. It changes numbers in a big way. And you got to realize the way the original numbers were done at the suggestion of what we knew, okay, from what experience we had, and saying, okay, well, you're going to need this many veg plants for this long to and then fill up this much flower room. So you got to think about all the numbers and time periods and everything was all coming from the black market. So that means that all the plant counts basically are too low.
Well, and this is a time too when the plant was worth a lot more money than it's worth nowadays. And you and I always talk about when we were in Holland, the profit margin is 10 cents per kilo.
Oh, I mean, it was,
what I mean? Yeah. And even nowadays with cannabis, there's some markets where we're down to like $50, $100 per pound,
right?
In which, you've been doing it as long as we have. There was a time where pounds were $5,000, $6,000. Like think about the profit margin then. So a big part of it is cannabis cultivators accepting the fact that like, hey, these profit margins are getting smaller and smaller, which they're just coming to what everyone else has.
Well, that's kind of what I would say.
And we're still way above.
And I think if reality is labor's number one, electricity's number two. So now we're talking about two of your things, your highest costs. You're talking about more efficiency in your labor, meaning you're paying less labor, and then you're talking about less electricity. Holy shit. Now we're getting on to something. This is real horticulture, but this is also why you see almost all the data for this no-veg data with cannabis are coming out of basically the Netherlands, because they don't have the same kind of restrictions and they've never had the same kind of thought process. Even their regulators are going, oh, well, you just grow as many as makes sense in that in that density, in that zone. And granted, the density will be different, whether it's a shorter, squattier, more, I hate to say indica, but more indica leaning as opposed to, an airier, stretchier, more equatorial and or sativa leaning.
Billy likes to point out too that like they're going to get as tall as they're going to get. Regardless of what they have a certain amount that they grow.
Right.
And they're still going to grow. Like if you put them in today or you wait 2 weeks, that amount that they stretch in flower, they're going to stretch that same amount.
Yes. Yeah. And here's the one thing, and I feel remiss without saying this, definitely know what know your license before you go and make any major changes like this, because
the first thing I checked.
Yeah.
The first thing I checked. Billy was like, hey, take the square footage of the building, take the square footage of the benches, divide it by the number of plants, and boom, pretty quickly. But understand, at that density, you're at like 1.6 square feet per plant.
Right.
Which is a way different density than someone's doing 4 square feet per plant or 5 square feet per plant.
Well, and what this lends one to believe is that the whole system may have been built around a completely different problem that hasn't been addressed.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. It's funny because look, I'll give shout out where it's due. High Times was kind of the one, like Billy and I have been talking about this for a while. High Times had brought it up not too long ago. And I was like, man, like it's time to really do something, talk about this. Cause
hey, are you coming to Mary Jane Berlin in June? If so, make sure to sign up at jugdealers.net or click the link in the description below for a very exclusive free nutrient package that we are going to be giving away. This is incredibly exclusive. You got to get on the list to get it. We're going to actually be doing this right alongside our very good friend Josh D with the Real OG Kush Story, and he is doing an incredibly exclusive drop as well on S1 OG seeds. If you want to come and hang out with us, get a free nutrient package of things that have never been in Europe before, as well as possibly purchase some very exclusive seeds from Josh D, then come by and see us at Hall 21A, booth D107. Hope to see you there in June.
Wow, High Times had brought it up not too long ago. And I was like, man, like it's time to really do something, talk about this, because none of us really think about it. I would challenge anybody to say, like, what grows in the country are actually doing.
Well, and here's the other thing so let me get the cat out of the bag here, right? The electricity is really the number that everybody should be looking at and be getting everybody's attention. And we're going to really break it down. But if you think about it, nobody thought about, a nighttime rate is different than a daytime rate. Hell, in where I live, if you're running during the day, it's almost 3 times the rate within whether you're running at night. And this is just for normal electricity for people running their homes, right? So this isn't even, now, is it ag rates? Is it all these different things. Like there's a lot of ways, and I don't want to say necessarily manipulate the system, but I even know people that are running the lights on the cheapest time overnight and then banking into a battery bank. Okay, during the day when the electricity is twice as higher,
that's great.
And then dump it and going back and forth, right? So there's really
crazy smart.
There's really interesting things that are going on out there.
Just through us, flip, and we don't have a flip flop. We could run all our lights during the day or all our lights at night. We have them switch at 11 o'clock, so half the lights are on. We run half our flower rooms. And I believe we save a couple $100,000 a year just doing that. So if we were to have these 3 rooms, that we have a couple thousand lights in, where we were able to run them 6 hours less a day, that would save even more money.
Well, and let's look at the real numbers. So eliminating just 2 weeks of veg removes 252 hours of electricity use per cycle.
That's per room per cycle.
That's per room per cycle.
You know, I have 13 rooms.
So do the math.
Over 100 days.
Do the math over 100 lights and and that's the thing. That's on one cycle. So now let's do it over multiple rooms, multiple lights, multiple cycles per year, right? Like there's nobody, especially when you talk about, like you're talking about like Combi Clit, when you had those super thin margins, right? There's nobody in the tomato world that's going to go, sure, I'll just throw out voluntarily another 252 hours worth of electricity that I'm going to pay for.
So I can tell you too
that may be unnecessary
because I built that sweet calculator for me, but you're also going to save thousands of dollars in veg nutrient.
Okay, see, now we've got another level. So now here's the thing. So now we've saved on 3 major things, right? Because I would say nutrients is going to come right after labor, electricity, and then probably nutrients, right? Hey, he runs a facility, not me, guys. I'm just guessing here, but I've been around a little while.
Yep.
So now you're making your labor more efficient.
Yep.
You're not transplanting and shit like that. You're keeping your facility cleaner because you're not doing that kind of shit. You're expanding the amount of area that you can flower in. Okay, you're paying less for nutrients.
That hard defol that you're going to do at day 21 is going to be way less because there's just less plant material. You know what I mean?
Right. So again, less labor, less electricity, and less nutrients. So you're talking about your 3 worst offenders. And so that's where and how people are like, that's how you have to get down to be able to sell $400 units and actually be a profitable business. A large profitable business, okay? These are the things that truly have to happen. Otherwise, those numbers don't add up. That's also the reason, and again, pulled over for prohibition, nobody gave a shit about paying for extra. When it was 4, 5, 6,000 a unit, if you're at the grocery store and somebody goes, hey man, here's a liter bottle of Green Sensation. How much is it, man? Dude, it's like $200. Throw it on, bro.
It was the same thing as
It
was the same thing as when they told you you lost 10% on your bulbs. You're like, I don't give a fuck. I'm getting 2 pounds of light. And reality is, if I was getting 2.2 pounds of light, and again, when it's 5,000 a pound, big difference in 500.
And then also when you're running a couple thousand lights, 1% is massive, right? 1% is 1% in agriculture. They look at that massive. Whereas we always poo-pooed, 1% more. It's like, dude, no, in this level, like 1% is 1%.
I always tell my managers at that level, the percentages really, really matter
because they're virtually exponential at that point. You know what I mean? So like dude, like those kind of things can make or break companies, right? Well, okay, so let's get more into the biology. Let's baby. What does the plant actually?
How does the plant? We've talked about how we think.
Right.
What does the plant? How does the plant feel about this?
Well, I mean, here's the thing. The reality is, does it require? It is a photoperiodic plant that we know, right? We know we need to have, and we know that it is a short day plant, right? But the question is, does it need 18 hours of light for a certain period of time to then flip it? And the short answer is no, it doesn't. No.
Right, direct and to the point. No.
So when cloning, when you're cloning, are you doing 24 hours? Are you going 24 to 12? And again, I know this isn't fully implemented, but
We do just because it's easier that way.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought, right. And I've always done 24 on clones, and it's like, you only need 18. Yeah, whatever. It's like,
I go
pennies,
I go either
That's
way.
pennies.
I go
That's
either
pennies.
way.
But the bottom line is the plant doesn't care about the light cycle. It doesn't need a certain amount of 18.6. The only thing 18.6 does is keep it vegetatively growing. But it has no requirement to touch that light cycle. And I think that's one of those things that's never really been talked about. You know what I mean? And the reality is what it really requires.
I like seeing veg plants. Like I like aesthetically.
Oh, they're beautiful.
I like seeing them, but it's not necessary.
No, what is necessary is the root mass. That's what's actually necessary, because that's what you need to support the physiological aspects and the physiological demands of flowering. Because if you don't have that base and that ability to actually feed the plant properly, and you don't establish that properly right off the rip, it's not going to work.
Which means do a great job cloning and get those things rocking.
It means do an amazing job.
You
cloning.
want them to hit the ground and just boom.
And I don't want to spoil this, but I want to even talk about, I found it very interesting a little bit later on where that 0 to 5 ratio on looking at it, and it's actually not where I thought it would be. Right. So a little tidbit right there. But again, going back to photo period, that trigger is real. It's just not the same as requiring veg time. And that's, maybe I'm beating a dead horse a little bit here, but I think that was almost an assumption that nobody ever talked about or verbalized or anything. It's like, it's not needed.
Reminds me of the pot size thing, how we thought like big pots, big plants. And now it's actually irrigation frequency. Seems like a similar sort of thing.
Irrigation frequency and root base. The root base is a big part of it.
Right.
But that's the whole thing is like, look, if the brain is good, it doesn't matter how big the brain is.
Right.
Just needs to be able to push things through the plant.
That's what I keep telling people.
It's okay.
So the legitimate biological difference in a lot of other plants is the fact that it is photoperiodic, right? It is the fact that it is a short day plant that is triggered into flower by that extended darkness period. But again, has nothing to do with 18.6. It doesn't mean the plant needs 24, 18. It really doesn't need whatever.
Is this how we beat the autoflower guys? This is how we beat the autoflower guys.
Wow.
Because autoflower, because now, as we talk about this and as I think about it, now I'm like, well, the autoflower guys got to wait.
Yeah, no. I mean, no. And honestly, you had me there for a second because I had this other thought, and then I was like, you kind of caught me in between. But like, you're really right. Now, here's the one thing I want to mention: when we are talking about no-veg, we don't mean like seedling to flower.
That's a different. This is a clone situation.
Yes, exactly. So that like it needs to get in whether if it were a seedling situation, which some people will do something similar to this with feminized or autos. I run
F1s from Philos in the building every once in a while. And they actually do, I hate to say it, but they are consistently pretty good. Yeah, they're high THC, they yield, they do the thing, but they still need a month.
Exactly. That's the thing. And you have to get past the cotyledon stage. You need to get into several sets of true leaves is what they saw, right? Because the first two little ones, those aren't true leaves, those are cotyledons. So you need to get it up. That's the one thing I just kind of wanted to mention if you happen to be doing it that way, because in reality, what we're really talking about is doing it with clones, but in reality, you could do a similar thing with seeds, with autoflowers, things like that, which autoflowers, that is basically what's happening. So this, like you said, this is how you autoflower without autoflowers.
And even then, like we will have situations in my building where we just veg in place.
Right.
So we'll do, 5-6 days of veg and then do the thing. So and again, that's where you turn it into a life cycle of plant.
Well, right. And it's
not a veg.
Exactly. And there's no biological clock. It's literally root and shoot readiness. That's what signals the ability to get into flower.
Yep.
Okay. What actually happens, and I thought this was interesting from a morphology standpoint, and you've obviously seen this happen a bit more than me, but what actually happens in a no-veg plant after it flips, right? Because you still have to have some a stretch period. There still has to be a little bit different, some of those same things have to go on, but it's not the exact same, is it, Gabe?
No, and we're just starting to do this. So we have not really rolled this out too hard because it's a big commitment. And I'm going to tell you right now, it makes everybody very, very nervous because it's like, hey, nobody's done this before except for Billy. Nobody's done this before.
Right.
So we're listening to Coach. We're listening to Coach on this one.
We love Billy, but he's a certified nut job.
he's look in the great way. He looks at things like differently every time. that he's my boss, and every time I'm graced, which isn't on a daily basis, he really makes me look at things completely different.
That's awesome.
The dude's like a savant. He's like,
oh no, he is. That's why I say,
and there's certain things that he does and triggers and stuff like that. And I think part of this too is when you're going to a system like this, you got to be able to recognize the triggers. You got to, we always talk about drag cars,
right?
But when you see that big yellow light, no one looks at the miles per hour. They always look at the RPM.
Right.
And when you see that big yellow light, and when you're doing it this way, you've got to be paying attention. You've got to know.
And that whole concept, of a cut that's almost good enough is never good enough because it doesn't fit in a system like this. But what I also want people to understand is the vegetative growth doesn't disappear. It just compresses and overlaps with flower. Mm-hmm. So you still have that. It's
that first 5 days you're getting that stretch. You're pushing it right into that.
But it's getting like stretch and structure along with flower set. So it is different. It is a bit different that you're going to see morphologically as opposed to being somebody like all of us, myself included, that has been a traditional, clone veg flower type grower.
We were actually talking about the possibility of using spring. Because that's what spring was designed for.
Yeah, it's very true.
So Billy's actually talked about in this system, first week of flower using spring to get that bang. And to push that branching. And then from there, we start using the flower formula after like 7 days.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So this is new to me too.
And I find it very interesting that, again, these things are in theory. I've never done this, but this concept of building the structure while you're starting flower, as opposed to building the structure and then starting flower. Again, it's not that disappears, it overlaps, it compresses and overlaps. So those first, 2 to 3 weeks and whatever, it's these the sequences shift. I guess that's the big thing. The sequences shift, not the biology. And actually, this is one of the things that I found in what I was kind of alluding to about this root mass scoring system, right? So really where a lot of the importance comes in the quality gate, if you will, meaning this is the thing that's going to be the go ahead or not go ahead. It is the root development in these clones, right? So let's talk about the root mass scoring system. So again, the true quality gate in a system like this.
When Grodan does things, they have these trials that they do, and they've developed this kind of 0 to 5 root mass score for their Rockwell plugs. So they've kind of established a baseline.
Because if you're taking data, you have to have something has to be data. So 0 is no roots.
And Grodan's really good at it because let's face it, that's what Rockwell is about, is producing the strongest root mass so you can do the thing efficiently.
Right. So check it out. Boom. I mean, you're talking, stacks on stacks on stacks. But again, 0 is no roots.
No visible roots. This is going to be no visible roots at the plug base.
5
is going to be fully root bound. You're opening that thing up. You're seeing nothing but the white roots.
Before we reveal what the real true window is, I got to be honest, I was just assuming 5. Right?
Yeah. That's what you would think.
That's what you think. At the very least, 4. At the very least, 4. Like you're blasting. The reality
for the optimum window for a no-veg is a score of 2 to 3. Roots
2 to 3
beginning to emerge, but not root bound.
Because those things are still ready to blast into whatever substrate you put it in there.
They're preloaded.
Yeah.
So as soon as you get them in, they're just like bang.
Right. So if you do too early, it cannot handle the physiological demands.
And just plug here. This is where the Rhizium is going to really benefit you. When you do that transplant, when you have that score of 2.3, 2 to 3, and I would encourage you guys, like, hey man, figure out a way to score everything you do in your garden. So that way you have baselines, you know what you're looking for. But you do that transplant with that score of 2 to 3 and you give them that 1 mil of Rhizium, they are going to explode. And I'm telling you this from experience. Like, I don't just say it'll put roots on a popsicle stick. It will.
I've seen it. No. Here's the reality is it is a fine line. And that's why we alluded to earlier just how important obviously the heartbeat of the operation has always been the mothers in the clone room. There's no doubt. But the fact of the matter is there's essentially a 0 margin of error in the first 2 weeks when you're doing this shit. And the fact of the matter is if you take them too early, they can't hold the physiological demands. If you take them too late,
you miss the mark.
You have transplant shock.
That's the late shift.
Yeah.
That's when the yellow light came and you got the late shift.
And the reality is what it's going to do is actually going to slow them down. That's where you're going to see that transplant shock. And it's a transplant shock that we all see when we have a fully rooted plant where you think they're going to just blow up for a second. It like takes them a little bit to catch their feet. And then they actually, after they've been transplanted. But again, if you hit it right, you avoid the transplant shock. You have enough on there to take the demand so that they actually start uptaking food, things like rhizium that are going to maximize the rhizosheath zone on that root to maximize uptake is going to be available. And it's just, they're still moving, right? They haven't got to a point where they got lazy because they hit the side. I found that very, very interesting. Just the fact that, like, again, I'd have said 4 at the very least.
Yeah, you would have thought so, but you got to leave a little room there.
So basically what we're saying is that the clone quality variable becomes the single largest and most important variable in the entire system, which I don't think anybody would have thought that that's what we would have ended up talking about in this episode.
So here's the thing, and this is actually something I'm thinking about right now. Hey guys, today's show is brought to you by jugdealers.shop. You want to grow the best cannabis possible, head over to jugdealers.shop and get something like our Ruby Fulvic. It's going to give you more efficient uptake on your NPK. You could also try our Winter Frost to increase secondary metabolite uptake and improve your cultivar's flavor and phenotypic expression. Or finally, grab some Cocoa Blocks to save time and money. This is how you can support the show, and it keeps us going. We're never sponsored. We're 100% funded by you taking your garden to the next level. Head over to jugdealers.shop and get something to help your cultivation thrive. Now, back to the show.
Talking about this episode.
So here's the thing, and this is actually something I'm thinking about right now. When you do it the other way, you have that 2 weeks to cushion your fucked up clones.
Oh, in a big plant model, if you will.
Like for instance, in my building, when we have runts, we'll take the runts and we'll put them in the middle of the table and we'll put the bigger ones on the side. And within a couple days, they catch up.
Yeah.
With this, you don't necessarily have that. That's why a lot of us have done veg for so long, because we're like, look, give me time to get the plants to balance out, to acclimate, as we like to think.
Well, and let's think about it too. Like a lot of times the clones in veg kind of got, put to the side because we're harvesting at that time too, right? So it's just like kind of shove that to the side, like whatever. Oh, you spray the shit out of them. Maybe they get a little bit, whatever. You strip them down, and you just you have the time, but there is no recovery window in the system. So again, you're riding on that razor's edge, which, if you ride a race car and hit the turns at the right, I mean, you rip around.
Good chance to put it in the wall.
If you don't do it right, exactly.
And look, I would always encourage people, cut extra clones. Cut a lot of extra clones, cut 10, cut 15%. Not only does it give you the chance to pick the best ones, so if you're cutting 1,200 and you need 1,200, then you got to push the runs through.
Right.
If you're cutting 1,400 and you need 1,200, you can get rid of those 200. A plug is cheap. This is going to be your cheapest time to throw away a plant.
Really good point. That is actually a really good point. You've had the least amount of time put into it.
Least amount of labor, effort, all the things.
Nutrients, least sprays, all the things.
Billy says it all the time. If you're not throwing away plants, you're fucking up.
and we've been increasing viewership with Jug Dealers. Just for people that are new, who's Billy?
Billy,
really respect this dude, and let's give him a shout out.
Yeah, if you guys want to go back, I encourage anybody to go watch the couple Kind Bill episodes that we did.
Episode number 2.
He was the creator of live resin, and one of my really good friends. We won a Cannabis Cup, got second place in the Cannabis Cup together 10 years ago. But he really is, honestly, he's a pioneer on so many levels. He looks at things completely different than a lot of folks. Well, and he was one of the original testers for New Millennium.
Absolutely. So longtime friend of us personally, of the show, of New Millennium. So shout out to
episode 4 if you want to go back.
We affectionately call him Kind Bill, Billy Boy. God, he had that
look at him with that beard, dude. It's funny. I tell all the kids at work, like, go watch the Kind Bill episode. I'm like, and it's so
here's the one thing I look at that, and I know that Gabe, you obviously like using the race car analogies, and we've always talked about that with even running rock wool, or let's just say very low EC type systems. Is that if you hit it, but there's virtually no margin for error. I feel like this is almost taking that to the nth degree, right? Because you're literally, the trade off is very weird, because the trade off is, okay, no you lose a veg buffer, right? So you don't have to do the veg time, but you lose the veg buffer. And instead it means that the quality gate, as we've been calling it, is a propagation. So you've moved that quality gate, because I always had the quality gate at veg, right?
Now it's at mom's.
Now it's at mom's. You see what I'm saying?
And your moms have got, and the other thing.
I used to always go up and then, maybe veg a few extra, whatever, right? And so the quality gate was the way I've always grown, but now it goes from here down a whole step and eliminates the middle.
Here's the other component is Bill's pretty adamant about short mom times. And so we are only allowed, the oldest moms I'm allowed to have in my building before I get in trouble is 8 weeks old.
No shit.
Yeah, 8 weeks old. And so they grow up. We top them.
You were just butchering
Yo, mama, so young.
We top them. We clone them once, and then the second time we clone them, we kill them. So I will have a lot bigger density of moms.
Yeah.
I'll cut maybe 10, 15 per mom, and then literally these. And again, the shorter life cycle your plants have, if you're cutting off of moms that are 4, 6, 8 months old, those are 6, 8 months old plants. And then you're vegging them for 2 weeks. And by the time that plant is harvested, it's 8, 9 months.
Yeah.
For you to show up with powdery mildew or any of these other problems
guaranteed.
Shouldn't be a friggin' surprise.
That blew my mind.
Exposure.
Gabe.
Just
the
exposure.
idea that plants, when you clone them, they are not starting over. They are the age of the mother. These are not new plants.
And like,
they seem new.
Bro, I've fought Billy on all this stuff, dude. Like, because I was used to the way that I've been trained over the last however many fucking years. And the truth of the matter is, it's wrong. It's all wrong. All of it's wrong. You don't,
and
you
by
should
the way,
be pushing your moms through as fast as possible.
And by the way, that's okay. But this is one thing you need to go back on some of our IPM episodes and we talk about just shorter exposure time, right?
Yep.
And this is a big part of that, right? So you're using less pesticides. You're going to have less bug pressures. You have all these things. You have more aggressive, all the things, bro.
Move it through the system as fast as possible, and you will have the least amount of time you've exposed it to any BS. And that's honestly, that's the best IPM.
And then
get it finished faster.
You're talking about some older episodes, and just as I'm going through here, I'm going to issue a challenge to the juggernauts out there. We have one episode that's less than 1,000. It's the Eugene Monroe episode. It is episode 3.
Please go and give that
episode
a go.
6. You'll see right there. It's got
still under 1,000.
916.
Oh, come on,
guys!
We have one episode below 1,000. Go back and watch the Eugene. He's a legend. He's up there with Ricky Williams in the NFL, pushing cannabis through.
Dude, we got the circus animal in flower, right? The smoked catfish version 2. Right. Gene's calling it the circus animal. We got the circus animal in flower. It'll be in market.
Dude, it does have a zoo poop kind of.
Oh yeah, it'll be in market in Michigan by
we're getting off subject here a little bit, but and I do want to stick here. So the one thing that I also found was interesting was just the canopy architecture and stretch management. If you think about it, if a clone's going in, a well-rooted clone's going in at this and start and flip, is it only going to get to this big? Is it only no? So the stretch ratio is actually much higher.
That's what people.
That's where they get,
because no one does it that they don't know these things.
How the hell would they know?
You know?
But here's the other thing I like to think about it too, because what do we always say the light penetration is, Gabe? About that much.
Yeah, 3 feet.
So you're like, wait a minute. So you're telling me full light penetration from the very beginning, right? You're also talking about, I'm guessing that means it's keeping a lot more of the bullshit that's off top of any blocks and things as well, because it said light
all
penetration.
The things, less trellising, less trellising, less watering, less defoliation, all the things.
Well, and now it starts taking it, and I know that there's actually some studies we're going to quote, but instead of going A, B, C, going A's or B's and then LARF or wash or whatever.
It's all A, B.
It's all A, B, and it's 80% A and some B, right? So in a lot of ways, the veg period was functioning as a buffer, right? For essentially clone quality issues, right? Mm-hmm. But if your clone quality is up and that's your quality gate, like we said, now you can do something like this. But let's be honest, for most people that were growers, that's an epiphany I just had. That's part of the problem, Gabe, is the toughest problem that everybody had was cloning. Yeah. So if you could just get anything, you fucking took it, dude. Like I remember, like now cloning, I just leave it alone.
Oh,
go check it out. I do the easiest cloning method you guys have ever seen. I've got it on the Jug Dealers. I think all the juggernauts have checked it out. But if you become part of the Jug Club, you get to check out some cool things like that.
I always tell people, cut them, stick them,
leave.
forget about them for like 6 days. Don't.
Because what I was doing early on is I wasn't forgetting about them. I'm sitting there spraying
you're
twice
touching
a day.
them, taking the dome off, wiping the dome down. No, it's a waste of time, dude.
Now, let's talk a little bit about, and I alluded to this earlier too, but cultivar selection, which is going to be, more equatorial or less equatorial or whatever, India's stupid, whatever. But that's also going to, you guys know how I feel about that. Josh, can you move that up a little bit? But obviously this cultivar selection and how you're matching those cultivars up, it's like growing Cushmans with Mac.
You're not doing that. Yeah, you're not doing this with Mac.
No.
You're not doing this with Mac. Let's get it right off the rip.
Right.
You ain't doing this with Mac.
Right.
So don't have pipe dreams of doing it. There's certain, like I always say, you ain't gonna make a Chihuahua a Great Dane.
No, it's not gonna happen. You can, and this isn't gonna correct any kind of training times or anything like that. This isn't going to make a plant that cultivar, not that cultivar.
Yeah,
sorry,
Mac density might be like 0.6.
The plant, no shit. The plant's natural growth habit is what you're working with. So you do have to select properly, and you do have to match genetics properly if you're going to run different genetics on the same table, which that's a lot of reason why people don't. They'll have multiple genetics in the room, but they'll stick to one per table, right? Which makes a lot of sense, right? But, and this is something I was not familiar with this until you brought this up, but the genetics branching surface quotient.
The BSQ, baby.
BSQ, bro.
It's a real thing.
And this is how aggressively they fill horizontal canopy space under standard conditions. And different plants are obviously going to do that differently, meaning a shorter squatterier plant is typically going to have a higher plant density as opposed to a stretchier, more open plant, more equatorial. You see how I avoided using those terms?
Our buddy Jesse over at Mothership Labs, shout out to Jesse. He's actually got a 3D modeling program that he is putting together that will show you the morphology over time.
Wow.
Look,
modeling, man.
Y'all can hate AI all you want.
Modeling,
but the reality is this is when it's cool. This is when it really works, is when you can take empirical data and put it into something real, and turn it into something where we can actually plan out, hey, these are the genetics we can run and do this. Right. And again, I'm not saying it's going to be every room. I'm not saying it's going to be every genetic, but I'm saying for us, this is commercial stuff.
This is commercial.
I'm not trying to push you guys at home to be doing this because this is.
And again, most people at home are still working with plant counts, everything else for all the reasons that we did that before. Most people are still under those constraints. We just thought this was a very interesting look and peek into where cannabis is going. And
Schedule 3 is here.
And
Schedule 3 is here.
And
slow walking me, Joe.
And it's how it's going to align with current horticultural, practices, right?
This branch quotient thing is huge. This actually has a little to do with plants as much as like how train tracks are done. This is high level science. Look into this. Branching surface.
BSQ,
quotient,
baby. BSQ.
So again, shocker. And I don't think this is a shocker alert, but typically shorter, more compact indica type dominant are typically better for this, but it's definitely not impossible. You do just need to adjust some of the density if you're doing a more open and stretchier plant.
And as we talk about corn, I think I discussed I'd had those guys that are coming in that are doing the leaf sap testing, and they discussed with me about, and I had never thought about this, but as far as like kernels per ear, like I had never thought of kernels per ear and density of corn. I had just thought of maybe ears per bushel.
Sure.
But I had never thought of density per
think about like we're talking about, think if it's $25 more a unit over
100%.
1,800 units.
But that's where all this stuff matters so much, because again, less biomass and more biomass that really matters. It increases your numbers. It increases it's exponential. It's everything that's involved goes up.
And here's the thing. We've talked about the culture and why we ended up where we're at. We've talked about the biology of it, but at the same time, the math has to math.
Let's talk about the commercial math.
So let's talk about the math. Let's math it. Let's get the math. So at the end of the day, it's either going to make sense or it's going to not make sense. And clearly that's based on numbers, and that's going to be cultivar specific. There's going to be a lot of things that are into that. But the basic model is that each individual no-veg plant produces 30 to 50% less than a fully vegged big plant. Okay, that's something you can't avoid, right? Yep. It's kind of like when I would tell people that I take my GMO down in 8.5, 9 weeks. but it's not going to be the production you're getting at 12 weeks. It wasn't the production that you would have gotten when you were running it, right? Also slightly different terpene profile, but that's not the conversation for today.
But there's an easy way to fix that. Double your density.
Double your density, or shorten veg time and get a whole nother run a year.
Yep.
Now we're mathing, right?
Well, and that's the big thing. You're getting an extra, if a cycle went 75 days before and you're getting 5 turns in a year, because usually it's 60, you're getting 6. That's with us counting flower time. Right. Because no one, again, the number everybody was using when they say they do 60 flower, all the numbers we've used for years are wrong. They're just wrong, because you're not including that veg time in which you need to. But if you have just a 75-day plant life versus a 65-day plant life overall, you've gained 1 harvest a year.
Sure.
Now with that, if that's $1 million room, boom, done. We're done.
Now, here's one thing I can see people saying, well, what about somebody that has flower rooms, dedicated flower rooms that are always flowering? Well, keep in mind, guys, that veg space you had dedicated before. Hey, everybody, I did not want to interrupt the show. However, we need you to help us by taking your grow to the next level. Go right on over to jugdealers.shop and pick up some Slicium. Don't let bugs or a failed AC or a broken pump take your grow down. Get Slicium at jugdealers.shop. It is readily water soluble and uptaken immediately to thicken cell walls and reduce any and all abiotic and biotic stresses. Keep in mind, this is how we support the show. We are never sponsored. We are funded by you taking your grow to the next level. So to support us and your grow, head on over to jugdealers.shop and get yourself something real nice. Now back to the show. What about somebody that has flower rooms, dedicated flower rooms that are always flowering? Well, keep in mind, guys, that veg space you had dedicated before is now flowering space.
Yep.
Obviously some more of it's going to be dedicated because you actually have to have more clone and more mother room to fill up this, these additional numbers, because it becomes more of a numbers game. So that actually expands higher than the traditional model of, what you'd say 25%, veg space 70 or whatever, that model does change a bit. But the reality is that's the other thing. How much operational flowering space you end up in the place. So anybody that's thinking, well, what if you're just always flowering in that room, which obviously a lot of people do and are constantly plugging in. But guess what? Where they're plugging in from, that's also flowering all the time now, right? And that's where the math starts.
And that's honestly, that's one of the reasons I actually like the veg in place model, because it's kind of a mix of both.
Right.
It gives you just a couple days to, feel good about things.
Right.
And then you're in there. But the reality is, if you're doing 56 days and 5 days of flower or 5 days of veg, you're still at a 61-day cycle.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And so, and that's really what I'm trying to encourage people to look at it with this is like, let's not look at it as, let's not break all these things apart. Let's look at it as a full cycle. We're like, hey, this is how long a plant is alive.
I think that's one of the biggest things that we've done. The biggest disservices we've done is we've broke it apart.
Oh, we have. You're absolutely right in saying that. It's a disservice to the plant.
It's a disservice to the plant, and then all of a sudden we were looking at it and we were looking at these things with blinders on, right? Anyhow, let's talk a little bit about specifically the density ranges by cultivar type. Okay. Can you move that up a little bit, Grambo? Okay. So these shorter compact cultivars, you're looking at 6 to 9 plants per square foot. You can still see a range in there. It's not saying 6, 7, 8, 9. It's saying 6 to 9, right? Well, then more of an open, more equatorial, more sativa type, you're down to 3 to 5 plants per square foot, right? And these are not arbitrary numbers. They are based on this cultivar specific BSQ, which have actually trials have been done on, like we said, not only with Grodan, some other companies in the Netherlands as well. So these numbers, again, these are not arbitrary numbers.
This is not, we pulled it out of a hat.
Yeah, well, this is actually going on. Going above the optimal density, what happens for these given cultivar, it creates self-thinning and airflow problems. Makes total sense. More plants does not always mean more output. And in fact, that's why there's that range. And I remember even back in the day, seeing my buddy had a 6 light grow, right? He had let's say 36 plants one time, and then he did 6 plants the next time. And guess what he got? Same fucking amount. So
they know.
Yeah, they know, right? They know they're using their space, right? They're using it how you allow it to. And so that's the other thing that people have to understand is you want to talk about crop steering. Like this is fucking crop steering in my mind, right?
Big time.
And it's not necessarily the irrigation technique, but it's real crop
And I found this website. If you guys are interested after this episode to do more, it's called Scribd, SCRIBD. They break down all things cannabis and plant science. They go through all of Grodan's data and publish it in ways that are
Josh, you're going to put us out of a job. What are you doing?
No, this is supplemental. This is just for you eggheads.
Thank you for pulling that up. That's badass.
You eggheads that want to go deep and you know who you are.
And like we say, we bring you to the rabbit hole.
Yeah, you got to go
That's
down.
right.
You might go in.
You can take a stoned horse to water, but
You can't make them smoke that joint.
No. Okay. Here's the other thing that I thought was, and I alluded to it earlier, but that shift of, basically the grade A, grade
the quality
C
shift.
the quality shift,
a
right?
lot more A buds, a lot less C buds, as much as an 80% reduction in grade C.
In grade C, it's almost meaning no C.
And again, a lot of that labor that you're spending and having these guys pull it off in a 5 foot, 4 foot tall plant, you're just not spending that time on that.
Well, that's
less touch time.
Less touch time. So again, that becoming part of your IPM, which is really crazy to think about that. I've never thought about that.
Yeah.
Less touch time is actually part of your less touch time and less time alive is part of your IPM.
Less time alive, great IPM.
Great IPM. But you got to understand, like in this no-veg type, the plant was the entire plant's in that light window, right? So again, that's why everything basically goes away. And like we said, these things like de-leafing and whatnot, it's not going into these absolute monster shrubs.
The de-leaf
right?
you do at the end. The de-leaf, all of it.
Here's what it comes down to. More biomass is sellable for a higher price. That's what your bosses always want to hear, guys. And even as a home grower, that's still
more
what we want.
More A-buds.
Yeah,
that's what
we want
people
more
want to
A-buds.
see. It's 2026. There should be no beef.
My new sitcom coming out.
And again, and here we go again, going right back to less labor because we've got less trim labor. We've got less processing time. We've got higher revenue per gram. The math
seems like a lot of wins for me.
Why don't you talk to us a little bit more about, as we wrap this sucker up, the electrical and labor savings? We've been really beating on the labor savings, but
you're going to see a 30% electrical savings in eliminating 18.6. You're going to see a 37% reduction cost in labor. You're going to see 252 hours of electricity eliminated per light cycle.
Right.
Per light cycle. I put in 2 flower weeks a room, kids, or 2 flower rooms a week, kids.
So, and if you want to do the fun math on Grays, you can get the kilowatt hour and do 2,600 lights times that 5 to 6
cycles a year,
with 252 per cycle.
Yeah, it's craziness how much you can save. The bigger the building, the more you can save.
So, what are the operational challenges? And I think we've already alluded to this. We'll move through this fairly fast.
Plant count numbers.
Plant count. You got to have the plant count. If your license it caps plant count, you either got to get another license or you've got to work within your situation. We've always said there's ideal and then there's real. Ideal might be no veg. You might not be able to get the plant count to actually do that, right? Yep. Or maybe you reduce the operational aspect of your facility. Maybe you switch it up in there so that you can work within your plant count but run less square footage, still saving you money.
Something I did just think about, if most of your veg plants are like the quote unquote veg plants, they're clones now. But if they're under 8 inches, they don't need tags until so you've actually eliminated.
Some hacks.
You've eliminated quite a few tags. Not exactly what you need, because again, in my rooms, the math I've done, I need 1,000 extra plants. In flower, but you can game it a little bit.
So keep that in mind, guys. That means the propagation infrastructure is going to change dramatically. You're going to need 3, maybe even 4 times more clones to do this type of system.
Yep. And you're going to need 3 to 4 times more moms.
And if you're doing 3 to 4 times more clones.
If you're doing it the way I'm doing it, you're really going to be pushing moms through there, but all possible. It's just, you got to work the math.
Here's the other thing that I didn't really consider either, right? When you have bigger plants and things like that, there is a little bit, you do have kind of a buffer on your environment, right? You really have to have not only very dialed propagation, but your environment doing high density planting like this has to be really on.
Yeah, I mean,
really on
when you have big plants, you water those things hard and they drive that humidity in the room. This is going to be more you maybe having some humidifiers and doing the thing.
Here's the thing that, again, but again, going back to the whole thing, if you have your environment really on point, then PM botrytis, things like that, in a high density situation that would proliferate much faster are not going to be able to.
Yep.
The shorter life cycle reduces the window for pest establishment. We already talked about that. And that's a huge IPM upside. But airflow has to be right, and it has to be right from the very, very start, because you're also reducing boundary layers,
but honestly,
increasing gas exchange.
It should be easier because you're not creating all these different.
I know.
So,
well, here's the reality. There's no question that commercial cannabis production, and you're right there in the thick of it, is moving towards a more industrial, throughput focused model rather than a craft per plant based model. But again, that's I think really, good, bad, or indifferent, at least on a commercial scale. That's the only way that people are going to be able to stay in business.
Yep.
Obviously, these other models are always going to be completely fine for the home grower, right? Growing big plants for a home grower, that's completely fine, right? And as long as we want to play within the confines of what we've been given, typically that's going to mean to get the amount of production that we want, right, per plant, it's going to necessitate having bigger plants, whatever. But that's more of a homegrown situation. This was, a pretty commercial, no-veg type thought process. But again,
I think this equates to the home grower. I think this is going to change a lot of people's minds out there.
Well, I think here's the thing. You can implement this to a point, though. I don't think there's any question about that.
Just the idea of running, it's like, I'm running a 6-week veg. All of a sudden, maybe I'm not.
Yeah. I mean, look, dude, again, get them through fast.
Get them through fast. Hey, do a couple quick shout outs before we get to it.
I wanted to shout out the homie Dread.
Oh, okay.
You always see me wearing the hat, but those guys took 3rd place in the candy at the Billies this year.
At the Billies.
So big shout out to those guys. It was huge. And it's not just Dread. It's Weed Pray Love. It's BHO Johnson.
It's the whole team. Yeah, it's the whole team.
Those guys are doing a great job. And then I actually want to give a shout out to my squad because we got a new drop coming called 2 Odd. So number 2
odd.
And the word odd. It's all Scietetics grown. It's all like we're doing all the things.
So Michigan is about to get hit with some 2 odd out of flourish.
This is something that Billy and the bosses have been working on real hard, including myself. But we've been working real hard on it to try and bring some quality into some more quality. Not saying there isn't any, but just bringing another flavor.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so shout out to the squad. They've been doing a great job getting that rolling. Oscar, the whole group, and look out for us in Michigan. Look out for Daweed the Duck with the mohawk and the spike collar. But there's going to be some cool stuff out there. We're really excited about it. And I'll be honest with you, that Scietetics flavor, man, it is. We got red runts, we got super silver haze, we got super gremlin, we got a bunch of really cool flavors. And we're actually going to have soon enough, we're going to have my head cultivator on.
Yes, we are.
Talk about the switch from going to the hardcore salts to the Scietetics, because it's not that Scietetics aren't salts.
No.
Just a different quality of salts.
Correct.
But we're going to talk about the switch that he really noticed and how we turned him into a believer.
And that it's not just plant essential nutrients. There are plant beneficial nutrients and stimulants and things out there. And in fact, Gabe, speaking of Billy and the squad, Billy's been one of these guys, and I think we've mentioned a couple times on here, the no-veg concept, which seems to be...
He was the one who, he was the impetus of this.
So I know you guys have been experimenting, legitimately looking at it in your facility, and we're talking about a, 2,300 light facility?
2600 light. 26 flowering, in which, I'll be honest with you, even that number changes with an episode like this because you get rid of veg,
right? You
add flower lights, or at least, like the way we're talking, we're going to be getting, like, we're only going to have mom rooms,
right?
We're going to turn we're actually going to turn one of the mom rooms into a flower room,
right? And
then we're actually going to make the veg rooms where we grow super short moms. We cycle them through in 8 weeks. I mean, a different way of doing things, but to be fair, the way a lot of commercial.
Well, and that's make it be part of your IPM, guys. Get them to throw so fast and allow so little pest establishment that it becomes part of your IPM program. All right. That is a wrap on this one. This has been a great discussion. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to the Jug Dealers from the Jug 10. Until next time, we'll see you soon.
Love you guys.
Peace. Hey, everybody. Big shout out to all of our European listeners. If you're planning at being in Berlin for Mary Jane in June, come by and see us. We're going to do a very exclusive drop on some products you guys have never seen before. It will be sign up only. You'll come and pick up your package there. The way to sign up for this is to go to our website at jugdealers.net and click on the MJ Berlin tab. You can also type it in at jugdealers.net/MJ Berlin, and that will be to sign up for a very exclusive nutrient pack that will be dropping for the very first time. This is available to anybody that's going to be attending Mary Jane Berlin. You must get it in person. Come by and see us. We'll be dropping our booth number here sometime real soon. But if you want to get signed up now, go and click the tab or type in the address and we'll get you signed up. Thank you so much, and we'll see you in Berlin.